Thank you and good evening. Oh, our technology works. Hi, I'm Bob McDonald. Now you know what I look like. This is it. I am delighted to be here tonight for a number of reasons. One, to introduce you to Simon Winchester, a remarkable author who's been a guest on Quirks and Quarks, and also to be here in a library. Wow, that you like books, a dying art, books. Do you know that, listen, it's not actually dying because Captain Picard, captain of the Starship Enterprise, his most prized possession was a leather-bound full works of William Shakespeare that he kept in the captain's quarters. In the 24th century, a book was still important. So books are not dead by any means, and thank you all for coming here tonight. Simon Winchester, I got a bio on him here. It's like 4 pages long, and we wouldn't hear from Simon if I read the whole thing, but let me I just highlighted a couple of things, okay? So he's born in London and all that. When he went to school in Dorchester, he has the distinction of being appointed head of house, which is quite impressive, and soon thereafter being expelled for conducting a spectacularly destructive chemical experiment in the newly opened science laboratory. So hey, wow, he blew up the lab. What a guy. He went on, he became a 6-man team on a sledding expedition to uncharted section of the East Greenland ice cap in 1965. In '66, he worked as a geologist for a Canadian company, actually. It was Falconbridge, Africa. And he worked in Uganda as a field geologist there. He switched to journalism in 1967, and he's just been all over the world. He worked on an oil rig in the North Sea for a while. Well, this keeps going here. Then he worked for the Guardian newspaper. He was named Britain's Journalist of the Year in 1971. He was a frequent commentator on BBC Radio. That's the other network other than CBC. You see, there's CBC has a world thing, and then there's this other thing called the BBC that he also worked on. Then he worked in Ireland for a while. Then he went to Calcutta. Then he was posted in Washington, D.C. as American correspondent. He was there during the Watergate affair. Then he went to New Delhi. It keeps going just all over the world. New York, feature writer for the Sunday Times. Then he went to the Falkland Islands when all that noise was happening. London, he went to, by way of Moscow, he made his way up to Hong Kong, where he worked for many years there in Hong Kong. And he was actually there when the handover of the British colony to China, when the British handed it over in 1997. And then he was working in New York. And so Simon Winchester has been all over the world. He is a true earthling. He is an earthling, and he's a brilliant author. Please welcome Simon Winchester.
Very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Simon, we're going to talk about 2 books tonight. His most recent is called Atlantic, and the other one is called The Man Who Loved China, which you wrote in 2008.
I think so, yes. Yeah.
Yes. But Atlantic is his most... Now, Simon's also been on Quirks. We had him on our show talking about Krakatoa, and I want to ask you a little bit about that later on. But Atlantic. So there are... we say there are 7 seas, but I only count 5 oceans. Atlantic, Pacific, Arctic, Antarctic, Indian Ocean. What are the 7 seas?
I think you've got to count the Mediterranean.
Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, is it?
No, I don't think the Black Sea. I think it was Indian. I mean, I didn't write about the 7 seas. I only read about one of them. So this is putting me on the spot. Like someone asked me a few minutes ago if I had arrived in America and it wasn't called America, what would I call it?
What would you call it?
Well, I was given about 3 seconds to give the answer. I said Fabulandia.
Good name. Good name. Anyway.
So it's a long way of saying I can't remember what the 7th sea is either.
But of all the seas, of the oceans, why did you choose the Atlantic to write about? I mean, the Pacific is a whole lot bigger. It's a much more grand ocean. Why the Atlantic?
Because I had written a book about the Pacific. But it was monumentally unsuccessful. And I was living in Hong Kong, and everyone said to me, the Pacific is the ocean of the future. And so I traveled for 2 or 3, I mean, I really drank the Kool-Aid after people told me that, and I said it must be, and I traveled for about 2 years from, Kamchatka to Chile and Alaska to Australia and back and forth, and then wrote this book, which really was not a success. And believe you me, I know about books that are failures, because I wrote a book about America once in the 1970s, about the American Midwest, that sold only 12 copies. So, and this was not quite as bad as that. I think it might have got into treble figures, but only just. But I think the reason was that although it may well have been true, or remains true, that the Pacific is the ocean of the future, what it clearly wasn't, in human terms anyway, was the ocean of the past. Because although you have Captain Cook, and you've got Magellan, and you've got the Polynesian navigators, there's precious little human history when compared to the two bodies of water that have a lot of it. And the two that have a lot of it are the Mediterranean, which I think one can fairly say is the inland sea of the classical world, and then the Atlantic, which, had I thought this through more carefully in the mid-1980s, is the sort of inland sea of the modern Western world. So what I had done, I had backed the wrong horse, basically. And so I licked my wounds and thought, well, one day I would write a book about the Atlantic, and that's what I eventually did.
In the book, you talk about the Atlantic as changing from a barrier to a bridge of convenience. Tell me about that.
Well, and I think that's partly one of the reasons why I decided in the end, I mean, having the sort of philosophical reason for writing the book, that it was an important ocean. The triggering event, or one of them anyway, was the realization when I was flying across the Atlantic, when it had become a bridge of convenience, how little we regard it. I mean, it's hidden in plain sight, if you like. You are on one of the milk run flights between London and New York, and the food is dreadful, and the companion is next to you is awful, and the magazine is dreadful. And 3.5 or 4 hours has gone past, and you look at that little moving map on the seat in front of you, and it's moving at an infinitesimal small pace, and you find that you're always somewhere between Greenland and Newfoundland. And it just doesn't seem to change. And it struck me that the Atlantic has been reduced now to just an inconvenient expanse of distance, something that you just wish it were over. And yet I thought, well, wait a minute, if you actually move the clouds away and look down, what is actually below there has been central to human existence for an awfully long time, and is full of a great catalogue of amazements. And so I wanted to try and, everyone who simply regards the Atlantic as the pond and regards it as an inconvenience, to try and remind people that it is romantic and beautiful and dangerous and filled with history.
I'm a baby magnet on airplanes.
Oh,
I always get the babies. Yeah, they're always around. Anyway, as a barrier...
But not the babes, that's the problem.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. As a barrier, though, we had sailed, you point out that we'd sailed the Mediterranean since the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans had no problems with that. But the Atlantic was another issue, getting over that horizon, getting out there, and that it was the Phoenicians who were really the first to do it. So what was their secret? How were they able to take it on and start sailing in the open sea?
Well, the Phoenicians, as you say, I mean, sailing from ports in the Levant like Sidon and Tyre, in these little boats, which were called galloi or hippoi, and in waters that were generally pretty benign. I mean, yes, the Mediterranean has storms, but not titanic storms. They sailed west. I mean, they traded in Greece and northern coast of Africa and Italy and so forth, and went as far west as Malaga. And then from there, they could see through the Pillars of Hercules, through between Gibraltar on the right and a cliff called Jebel Musa in what is now Morocco on the left. They could